Dear students, welcome to the MOOC on India's foreign policy in a globalizing world. In this lesson, we will discuss about external determinants of foreign policy. Main objectives of this lesson is to know about foreign policy, to understand what is national interest, to understand different external factors that determine a country's foreign policy, to understand how various external factors influence India's foreign policy. We begin with the first part of the lesson, in which we will discuss about international regimes and organizations, world public opinion and foreign policies of other states. Every state formulates foreign policy to meet its goal in the international system. Determinants of foreign policy are the factors which condition the foreign policy. Some of these factors are static or of unchanging nature, whereas others are in a state of flux and their dynamics are continually adjusted to the changing circumstances. They are always engaged in interplay amongst each other, while it is difficult to say which factor is more important, as it depends on various situations or circumstances. International regimes and organizations. The foreign policies of the state have to operate taking into consideration the external environment. The first and foremost important factor that constrains or influences the foreign policies is the presence of international laws, international treaties, trading blocs and various international and regional organizations. Several bilateral and multilateral treaties and agreements have to be taken into consideration while setting foreign policy choices. Activities of the international organizations like the United Nations and its agencies like the IMF, World Bank, WTO and regional organizations like ASEAN, SAARC, NAFTA, APEC and military pacts like NATO have an important bearing on the foreign policies of a state. World public opinion. Domestic public opinion is the most determinant of foreign policy. Similarly, world public opinion has come to play a crucial role in constraining foreign policy choices. In this world of fast communication and information exchange, there has been increased consciousness among the people at large, and there is also extensive people to people contact, all of which have facilitated the world public opinion on issues such as human rights, environment, war and peace and other related issues. Foreign policies of other states. The external environment of a state consists of the presence of other states. Therefore, the formulation and the operation of the foreign policy of a particular state has to take into consideration the behavior of the respective states as well as their foreign policy choices. Foreign policy objectives of a state have to be state specific in a way that it should maneuver its foreign policy choices according to relations with the states that are friendly and those that are hostile. Ultimately, it is the reaction of the states that matters the most. Therefore, foreign policy has to be engineered to get the desired result. International politics at any given point of time have direct bearing on foreign policies. The difficulty in conducting foreign policy arises because states do not have control over the behavior of other states. The United States changed its policy towards the Soviet Union and recognized it because in 1933, as Hitler's emergence in Germany posed a threat to the world order created before World War II. The Japanese aggression in Manchuria in 1931 provided a common threat to the United States as well as to the USSR in the Far East. The two powers gave up their hostility. The Cold War era during 1945 to 1990 has determined in a big way the foreign policy of most countries. The fear of nuclearized United States brought the countries of Eastern Europe under the control of the Soviet Union, as a result of which all these countries who adopted socialism come under the rubric of the Soviet Union. The entire policy of containment of communism adopted by the United States was evident in its setting up of NATO, CETO, CENTO and other such military alliances and arrangements. India's efforts in expounding the policy of non-alignment were directly a response to this emerging polarization in the international environment. The Cold War was the defining characteristic of world politics for nearly 45 years. Arms race, especially in the nuclear field, typically represented the height of suspicion and impending disaster. India's policy to take up nuclear disarmament emanated from the imminent and perpetual threat to human civilization if those weapons were to be accidentally or deliberately used. Since its independence, India maintained that it opposes the manufacturing of nuclear weapons. However, China, which launched an aggression upon India in 1962 and conducted the first nuclear test in October 1964, which led India to realize the importance of developing nuclear program and therefore conducted a peaceful nuclear test at Pokhran on 18th May 1974. India opposed nuclear non-proliferation treaty of 1968 as the treaty divided the world into two categories of states, nuclear haves and nuclear have-nots. Further, India argued that the treaty was discriminatory in nature and refused to sign the treaty, citing national security concerns and interests. Related to the nuclear field, India's successful testing in 1998 of nuclear weapons was justified as a necessary response to the fast changing international environment that sought to dismiss the demand for nuclear disarmament and sanctify the hierarchy between nuclear weapon powers and non-nuclear weapon powers. After the sudden end of the Cold War, followed by the disintegration of the Soviet Union, India's foreign policy underwent a paradigm shift on numerous counts, such as lack of enthusiasm towards the non-aligned movement, eagerness to accommodate the American concerns, resumption of full diplomatic ties with Israel, emphasis on economic aspects in relation to Europe, Southeast Asia and South Asia. Again, in the post-Cold War era, the increasing concern in international quarters on the issues of terrorism and human rights impelled necessary adjustments in India's foreign policy. During the 1990s, the critical observers of India's foreign policy noted the government's preoccupation with the question of Jammu and Kashmir in relation to its contacts with major countries and in global forums. The 11 September 2001 terrorist attacks on the American targets in New York and Washington presented new opportunities to India to push its anti-terrorist foreign policy with greater conviction. I hope you understood about the international regimes and organizations, influence of world public opinion and foreign policies of other states. We will discuss about principles of India's foreign policy and international peace and security in the next video. Thank you.